Close your eyes for a moment. Picture a place where the whispers of the wind carry not just the scent of salt marsh and distant oil refineries, but the echoes of pure, unadulterated fear. A place not from some gothic novel or a forgotten nightmare, but a very real, desolate stretch of land in the heart of Texas, a land where the sun beats down relentlessly, yet a permanent, chilling shadow seems to cling to the very earth. This is the story of a place known by a name that sends shivers down the spine of anyone who hears it, the Texas Killing Fields. For decades, this ominous moniker has haunted the remote, isolated landscape nestled between the sprawling metropolis of Houston and the historic shores of Galveston. It's a vast, indifferent expanse, 25 acres of unforgiving earth, crisscrossed by silent oil pipelines, overgrown with marsh grass, and tragically littered with the discarded hopes and dreams of dozens. This isn't just a plot of land, it's become a silent, unwilling tomb, a gaping wound in the heart of America where the wind seems to sigh with the unanswered prayers of countless families torn apart by an evil that has walked among us unseen, unpunished for far too long. Since the early 1970s, an unimaginable number of young women and a few men have vanished into thin air from this very region, their lives abruptly halted only for their remains to be tragically discovered or to never be found at all, within or disturbingly close to these infamous fields. We're not talking about isolated incidents quickly solved, then forgotten. No, we are confronting a staggering, horrifying tally that some researchers estimate could reach over 30, perhaps even more, precious young lives extinguished, their futures brutally stolen, their stories tragically silenced. This isn't merely a local tragedy. It is a festering, multi-generational wound on the fabric of American true crime history, a sprawling, unsolved horror story that relentlessly refuses to be closed, a dark stain on our collective consciousness. The cases stretch across decades, weaving a chilling tapestry of grief, suspicion, and a pervasive legacy of fear that still grips the community today. Daughters, sisters, friends, mothers, gone. Their individual stories, each one a universe of sorrow, often risk being overshadowed by the sheer, overwhelming scale of the terror. For nearly 50 years, an agonizing question has persisted, a chilling whisper through the tall, rustling grass. Who is responsible? Who possesses the chilling capacity to perpetrate such a long-standing, seemingly unstoppable reign of terror, leaving behind only shattered families, broken communities, and a complex, enduring mystery that continues to defy resolution? This is not just a collection of cold cases, it's a sprawling, interconnected web of despair, a profound testament to the persistent human cost when justice remains heartbreakingly elusive. We will journey deep into this geographical horror, meticulously examining the lives lost, the desperate, often futile searches, and the relentless, frustrating pursuit of answers. This isn't just about what happened, it's about the indelible, chilling shadow that still stretches over the Texas landscape, a shadow we intend to finally confront decades later with the unwavering hope of shedding new light.
Between the bustling metropolis of Houston and the sun-drenched shores of Galveston, Texas, lies a landscape that, to the untrained eye, appears deceptively ordinary. Acres of windswept marshland, oil pipelines snaking through tall grass, and quiet country roads vanishing into the horizon. It's a place where the air hangs heavy with humidity and the scent of salt, a place of isolated beauty. But beneath this placid exterior, a chilling secret has festered for decades, giving rise to one of America's most terrifying and enduring cold cases. This seemingly tranquil stretch of land would become infamously known as the Texas Killing Fields, a vast, silent burial ground where the whispers of the lost echo through time. This is where the shadows first began to fall, laying the groundwork for a mystery that would consume families, baffle law enforcement, and haunt a nation. It began with the disappearance of young lives, one by one, until a horrifying pattern became undeniable. Our journey into this darkness starts at the very beginning, with the initial cases that unveiled the chilling potential of this desolate expanse. The year was 1971 when the first known tragedy struck, painting the initial brushstroke of horror onto this unsuspecting canvas. On a warm July night, 13-year-old Colette Wilson vanished. A local girl, she had simply stepped out, seemingly into thin air, leaving behind a terrified family and a community grappling with an unfamiliar fear. Her remains were discovered months later in a field, a grim harbinger of the horrors to come. Yet at the time, it was a singular tragedy, a heartbreaking incident, not yet connected to a larger, more sinister narrative. It was the devastating precursor. Then came the 80s, a decade that would solidify the area's dark reputation. The first truly unmistakable sign that something profoundly evil was at work emerged with the disappearance of 16-year-old Heidi Fye in October 1983. Heidi was a vibrant, spirited girl, a student at Clear Lake High School. On a seemingly typical evening, after visiting her boyfriend, she called her mother from a payphone near a League City convenience store. She told her mom she was on her way home. She never arrived. The clock ticked, the hours turned into days, and panic set in. Heidi's family, alongside local law enforcement, launched an exhaustive search. Flyers blanketed the community. Hopes dwindled with each passing moment. The flat, featureless terrain offered no immediate answers, only vast, silent spaces. Then, in April 1984, 6 agonizing months after Heidi vanished, a dog discovered partial human remains in a deserted oil field access road just off Interstate 45 between League City and Galveston. The area was dense with brush, secluded, and utterly unforgiving. The discovery confirmed the family's worst fears. It was Heidi. Her death was ruled a homicide. The precise cause of death was difficult to determine due to the condition of the remains, adding another layer of frustration and mystery. The investigation, even then, was fraught with challenges. The lack of witnesses, the sheer desolation of the discovery site, and the limited forensic technology of the era meant leads were scarce. It was a standalone tragedy, a local girl gone too soon, or so it seemed.
The true chilling nature of the killing fields began to crystallize with the disappearance of 16-year-old Laura Miller in September 1984, less than a year after Heidi Fye vanished. Laura, another vibrant teenager from the League City area, had plans to meet friends at a local bowling alley. Like Heidi, she left her home, and like Heidi, she simply disappeared without a trace. Her family, already on edge from Heidi's unsolved murder, was plunged into a nightmare. They knew, deep down, that this felt different. This felt connected. The community, still reeling from Heidi's death, now faced a terrifying question. Was there a predator lurking in their midst? The search for Laura intensified, fueled by a growing sense of dread. Families and volunteers scoured the vast, unforgiving landscape. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The hope for finding Laura alive dwindled into a desperate plea for answers, for closure. Then, in February 1986, the nightmare became even more horrific. a group of hunters venturing into the same desolate oil field area where Heidi's remains had been found, stumbled upon another set of human bones. This time, not just one, but 4 sets of remains were discovered in close proximity. Among them, through dental records, were positively identified as Laura Miller. The other 3 victims were later identified as Shelley Sykes, aged 19, who had vanished in October 1986, and Suzanne Renee Braun, also 16, who had disappeared in December 1983, just 2 months after Heidi Fye. The 4th set of remains belonged to 14-year-old Audrey Lee Cook, who had gone missing in December 1985. The sheer horror of finding 4 bodies, all young women, all within a relatively small, isolated radius, was a seismic shock to the community and to law enforcement. This was no longer a series of isolated, heartbreaking incidents. This was a pattern. This was a serial killer, or perhaps even multiple killers, operating with terrifying impunity in their backyard. The implications were staggering. Local law enforcement, primarily the League City Police Department and the Galveston County Sheriff's Office, found themselves overwhelmed. The cases presented immense challenges. The vastness of the area, the often decomposed state of the remains which complicated forensic analysis, the varied timelines of disappearances, and the agonizing lack of direct witnesses or immediate suspects. These young women often came from different backgrounds, but they shared a tragic commonality. They were vulnerable, sometimes hitchhiking, sometimes out alone, making them easy targets for someone lurking in the shadows. The realization that this quiet stretch of highway had become a hunting ground, a dumping ground for the innocent, began to spread like wildfire. The media picked up on the story, and the chilling moniker, the Killing Fields, took root, giving a name to the unspeakable horror that had descended upon this seemingly peaceful corner of Texas. The initial investigations were marked by fervent but often disjointed efforts. Different agencies, limited resources, and the sheer scale of the emerging horror meant that despite the best intentions, a comprehensive, unified approach was difficult to establish from the outset. Each discovery brought a new wave of despair and a renewed, yet often fruitless surge of investigation. The families, united in their grief and terror, became advocates, refusing to let their daughters be forgotten. They saw the pattern, felt the chilling connection, long before the authorities could definitively link the cases. These early disappearances and discoveries were the first brutal chapters in a multi-decade saga of loss, unanswered questions, and persistent dread. They marked the chilling genesis of a mystery that would continue to unfold, claiming more lives and leaving an indelible scar on the landscape and the hearts of those who called it home. The shadows had fallen, and they were only just beginning to lengthen.
As the humid Gulf Coast air grew heavy with unspoken fears, a chilling truth began to emerge from the murky waters and desolate landscapes of Galveston County. What first seemed like isolated tragedies, disparate nightmares scattered across the vast Texas expanse, slowly coalesced into a terrifying, undeniable pattern. The whispers of missing soon morphed into the screams of murdered. And a community that once prided itself on its resilience found itself trapped in a nightmare woven by an unseen hand. It began subtly, a faint echo of dread, before blossoming into a crescendo of panic that would grip the region for decades. For a time, each discovery of remains, each report of a vanished loved one, felt like an isolated wound. Individual families endured their private hells, their pleas for answers often met with the grim reality of limited resources and a seemingly random, cruel fate. Yet beneath the surface of these individual tragedies, a meticulous, horrifying tapestry was being woven, thread by thread, by the very monsters who stalked the shadows. It took time, agonizing, precious time, for the scattered dots to begin connecting. Investigators, initially overwhelmed by the sheer volume of cases, began to see the faint outlines of a larger design. The victims, often young, vulnerable, and marginalized, shared an alarming commonality. Their disappearances frequently occurred under similar baffling circumstances, vanishing into thin air from seemingly innocuous situations, leaving behind only desperate questions and a chilling silence. This wasn't merely a string of bad luck or unrelated crimes, it was a calculated, insidious campaign of terror. The aha moment, if it could be called that in such a grim context, wasn't a sudden flash of insight, but a slow, creeping realization, like a tide of dread washing over the collective consciousness of law enforcement. They began cross-referencing missing persons reports with unidentified remains, sifting through the heartbreaking details of each case. And as they did, a horrifying geographical nexus began to crystallize, pulling the disparate threads of terror into a tightly woven, inescapable web. Two locations in particular rose from the background noise of ordinary life to become ominous markers on the map of death. The Texas City Dike, a 5-mile-long granite and concrete barrier jutting into Galveston Bay, was once a popular spot for fishing, family outings, and lovers' strolls under the vast Texas sky. Its very existence was a testament to human ingenuity, a man-made structure designed to protect the port. But in the hands of a predator, its isolation, its lack of surveillance, and its proximity to the open waters of the Gulf transformed it into something far more sinister, a dumping ground. It became a silent, grim witness to unspeakable acts, its waters concealing secrets that would haunt generations. The image of the dike, once benign, now evoked a visceral chill, a place where innocence met its end, and where the vastness of the bay seemed to swallow both bodies and hope. Its barren, wind-swept expanse became synonymous with loss, each fishing pier and stretch of shore a potential grave. Even now, the mere mention of it conjures an image of desolate beauty intertwined with profound horror. Then there were the oil fields. Vast, industrial labyrinths of towering derricks, storage tanks, and a maze of pipelines stretching for miles, often just beyond the edges of residential areas.
These were places of hard labor, of isolation, and often of obscurity. They offered endless nooks and crannies, remote access roads, and a constant hum of machinery that could easily mask a scream or the sound of a struggle. For a predator seeking anonymity and a place to discard evidence, these sprawling industrial zones were a grotesque sanctuary. The metallic scent of petroleum, usually just part of the everyday industrial backdrop, became tainted with the stench of decay and the lingering shadow of unimaginable cruelty. Together, the Texas City Dike and the oil fields formed a macabre axis, a chilling corridor of death that linked the victims and shattered the illusion of safety. The sheer audacity of the perpetrator or perpetrators to repeatedly use these recognizable locations spoke volumes about their impunity and their twisted sense of control. This wasn't a random opportunist. This was someone who knew the land, who understood its hidden corners, and who operated with a terrifying confidence born of prolonged success. The community, initially reeling from individual tragedies, began to feel the tightening grip of collective fear. Parents clutched their children tighter. Neighbors eyed strangers with suspicion, and the once vibrant rhythm of coastal life took on a tense, guarded quality. Whispers turned to urgent warnings, then to outright terror. Was it one monster, or was it a hydra-headed evil, multiple predators operating in concert or independently, exploiting the same vulnerabilities and landscapes? The very thought sent shivers down spines, amplifying the sense of helplessness. The idea that a serial killer, or even a network of them, could operate with such chilling regularity, leaving a trail of broken lives and undiscovered truths, was almost too much to bear. The realization that their community was being systematically targeted, that their children, sisters, and mothers were becoming mere statistics in a cold, brutal game, ignited a desperate cry for answers, a demand for justice that would echo through the decades, unanswered. The air crackled with a palpable sense of unease, a gnawing suspicion that the monster walked among them, watching, waiting, emboldened by every unanswered question and every unsolved disappearance. The terror wasn't just in the darkness, it had seeped into the daylight, poisoning the sense of security and trust that forms the bedrock of any community. This was no longer just a series of isolated cases, it was a web of terror, meticulously spun and catching far too many. The sheer scale of the horror, the persistent use of these geographical markers began to paint a picture of a calculated campaign, an ongoing nightmare that had firmly taken root in the heart of the Gulf Coast. The investigators, faced with a burgeoning crisis and an increasingly desperate public, knew one thing for certain: they were no longer hunting individual criminals. They were now hunting ghosts, shadows, and a chilling, elusive pattern that threatened to consume them all.
Imagine a silence that screams. Not the quiet of a peaceful night, but the deafening void left by a loved one who simply vanished. For countless American families, this isn't a nightmare that fades with dawn. It's the unyielding reality of decades spent living with an empty chair, a missing voice, and a haunting question that echoes through every waking moment. What happened? This is not just a story of cold cases, of faded documents and forgotten clues. This is the harrowing, heartbreaking saga of the families left behind, transformed by an unimaginable loss into an army of relentless, unwavering advocates. They are the voices of the vanished, their tireless pursuit of justice a testament to love's enduring, defiant power against the cruel tide of time, a fight waged on the very ground where their lives were irrevocably altered. When the initial headlines fade, when the search parties disband, and the public's attention inevitably shifts, these families remain. They are trapped in a unique limbo, denied the closure of knowing, the solace of a grave, or the simple justice of accountability. Their grief is not a linear journey, but a cyclical torment, an open wound that refuses to heal because the truth remains elusive, locked away in the shadows of an unsolved crime, often in towns and communities that struggle to reconcile their own identity with the horror that lingers. Consider the mother who still sets an extra plate at Thanksgiving, her gaze drifting to the empty seat where her child should be, a ghost at every family gathering. Picture the father who year after year revisits the last known location, his hands sifting through memories and overgrown foliage, hoping to unearth a forgotten detail, a single thread that might lead him closer to the truth. These aren't just figures of speech. These are the lived realities of men and women whose lives were irrevocably fractured the day their loved one disappeared, their world collapsing into a void of uncertainty. For them, the official investigation, however diligent, often feels like a distant, impersonal process. They are privy to fragments, sometimes offered reassurances, but more often left to navigate a labyrinth of bureaucracy and silence. The initial flurry of police activity, the media appeals, they all eventually wane. And that's when the true lonely battle begins. A battle waged not just against an unknown perpetrator, but against the inexorable march of time itself, which threatens to erase memories, scatter witnesses, and bury clues under layers of dust, making resolution seem an impossible dream. It's in this desolate landscape that grief mutates into something fierce, something active, something profoundly resilient. For many, inaction is simply not an option. It would be another form of abandonment.
They become amateur detectives, poring over case files with magnifying glasses, revisiting crime scenes with fresh eyes, learning the language of forensics, and analyzing every detail with an intensity born of desperation.
They spend countless hours on phone calls, connecting with other families, sharing strategies, and forging a community of shared sorrow and defiant hope, a network bound by unspoken understanding. Their homes become shrines of memory and offices of activism. Walls are adorned with meticulously organized binders, flyers, intricate timelines, and countless photographs, a visual testament to the vibrant life that was and the baffling mystery that persists. Bedrooms remain untouched, preserved as they were on the last day, poignant museums of absence where the dust of years settles on once-loved toys and forgotten books. These families learn to live with ghosts, not just of their loved ones, but of the ceaseless questions that haunt their every breath. Grassroots activism becomes their lifeline, their defiant roar against the silence. They organize vigils, memorial walks, and public awareness campaigns, not just to honor the memory of the vanished, but to keep their cases firmly, relentlessly in the public eye. They understand that public pressure can be a powerful catalyst, stirring renewed interest from law enforcement, encouraging hesitant witnesses to come forward, and reminding a forgetful world that these lives mattered, that justice still yearns to be served. They print thousands of flyers, each one a desperate plea, a tiny beacon of hope scattered across cities and states, pasted on lampposts, handed out in grocery stores, shared endlessly online. They learn to speak to the media, transforming their raw grief into a powerful narrative, hoping their words will spark a memory, prick a conscience, or simply remind someone, somewhere, that an answer is still desperately needed. The emotional toll of this unending vigil is immeasurable. Decades of uncertainty carve deep lines into faces, etch sorrow into their very being, manifesting as chronic stress, anxiety, and profound depression. The stress of constant advocacy, the cyclical nature of hope and crushing disappointment, takes its own brutal toll on physical and mental health. Marriages buckle under the strain, siblings drift apart, and the very fabric of family life is stretched to its breaking point. Yet, for many, to stop fighting would be to betray the memory of their loved one, to surrender to the darkness that consumed them. It is an unbearable thought, a moral imperative that transcends their own suffering. We hear stories of mothers who dedicated their entire lives to finding their children, learning to lobby politicians, to navigate complex legal systems, and even to interpret cryptic clues from anonymous tips. Fathers who, in their quiet anguish, established foundations in their child's name, funding DNA research, offering substantial rewards, or providing vital support to other grieving families caught in the same agonizing limbo. These are not ordinary citizens, they are accidental heroes, forged in the crucible of tragedy, their resilience an awe-inspiring testament to the boundless capacity of the human spirit. Consider the sheer longevity of some of these struggles, cases that span 20, 30, even 50 years, stretching across entire generations. Children born after the disappearance grow up knowing only the shadow of their lost relative, inheriting the torch of the search, their own childhoods shaped by the gaping hole in their family tree.
Grandparents pass away without ever knowing what happened to their grandchild, carrying that torment to their grave. It is a generational burden, a legacy of unanswered questions passed down through the bloodline. And with each passing year, the trail grows colder, the witnesses fewer, the memories hazier, making their fight all the more desperate, all the more heroic, against nearly insurmountable odds. Their pursuit of justice is a profoundly lonely crusade. They often feel misunderstood, their enduring grief mistaken for an inability to move on, their passionate advocacy sometimes seen as an impediment. But for them, moving on isn't an option when there's nowhere to move to. There's no grave to visit, no final farewell, no definitive ending. There's just an endless horizon of what-ifs and if-onlys. punctuated by the agonizing silence that consumes their days and invades their dreams. Yet, amidst the profound sorrow, there are glimmers of light, fleeting but potent. Every now and then, a cold case is cracked. A witness finally speaks after decades of silence, or new forensic technology sheds light on an old forgotten clue. And in those moments, the family's collective hope flares brighter, a powerful flame against the encroaching darkness. They know that breakthroughs are rare, often the direct result of their sheer persistence and the unwavering will of someone refusing to let go. These small victories, however distant, however hard-won, fuel their resolve, reminding them that justice, though delayed, is not always denied. They are a living, breathing memorial to those who've been forgotten by time, but never by love. Their relentless pursuit is a powerful, poignant reminder that every life has value, every disappearance leaves an indelible mark, and every family deserves answers. They're the guardians of memory, the keepers of hope, battling against the tide of indifference and the cruel hand of fate. Their voices, though often strained with sorrow, resonate with an unyielding strength, demanding justice for the vanished and a future where no other family has to endure their unique, unending torment, their geographical horror stretching across the nation. They teach us that while crime rips apart lives, the resilience of the human heart, fueled by unwavering love, can stitch together a community of purpose, a collective shout against the void. They stand as a powerful counter-narrative to the quiet anonymity that often engulfs cold cases. These families don't just mourn, they march. They don't just remember, they research. They don't just grieve, they grow into fierce warriors for truth, ensuring that the shadows of unresolved mysteries do not claim yet another victim, the memory of the lost. Their story is woven into the very fabric of America's unsolved past. It is a story of enduring love, incredible resilience, and the relentless, often thankless pursuit of a peace that may never come. But they continue to fight, day after day, year after year, refusing to let the voices of the vanished be silenced by time. Their strength, their courage, and their unwavering belief that their loved ones deserve to be found, to be remembered, and to have their stories concluded is perhaps the most profound testament to the human spirit in the face of unimaginable loss.
The horror had struck. The town, once sleepy, now shivered under the weight of unspeakable acts. But as the initial shock faded, a new, equally chilling reality set in. Who had done this? And why couldn't they be caught? This wasn't a puzzle waiting for a quick solution. It was a labyrinth, a sprawling, tangled investigation destined to haunt generations. From the very first, the quest for answers plunged into a quagmire of confusion, a relentless battle against an elusive enemy and the inherent limitations of time itself. Every lead became a potential lifeline, every suspect a fleeting shadow, and every dead end a fresh stab of despair. This is the story of the tangled web, the leads, the lies, and the lingering doubts that have plagued this historical American cold case for decades. In the nascent days of the investigation, the landscape of crime solving was starkly different. Imagine the sheer chaos. Overwhelmed local police departments, often ill-equipped and understaffed, grappling with the level of brutality they had never encountered. The very concept of a meticulously preserved crime scene as we understand it today was largely a distant dream. What we now recognize as critical forensic evidence, a stray fiber, a faint footprint, a smudge of blood, was frequently overlooked, trampled, or simply washed away by well-meaning but ill-equipped officers. Imagine the ghost of evidence, forever lost in the fog of initial blunders, haunting every subsequent attempt to piece together the truth. This fundamental lack of early forensic understanding became the first and perhaps most devastating obstacle. Without the anchors of undeniable scientific proof, the investigation was adrift on a sea of speculation. Public pressure, a ravenous beast demanding justice, quickly propelled various individuals into the spotlight, often with little more than circumstantial whispers or unfortunate proximity.
There were the local eccentrics, the drifters passing through, the estranged family members. Each, for a time, became a person of interest, scrutinized under the harsh glare of suspicion. One prominent figure, let's call him the quiet man of Willow Creek, was hounded for months simply because he preferred solitude and owned a similar type of vehicle seen near one of the crime scenes. His life was torn apart, his reputation irrevocably stained, yet no concrete evidence ever linked him to the murders. These early, often desperate pursuits consumed vast resources, sending investigators down countless frustrating dead ends. Each false lead, each exonerated suspect, wasn't just a failure to capture the killer. It was a depletion of morale, a draining of the precious energy needed for the long haul. The controversy around some of these initial suspects, often fueled by sensationalist media and public hysteria, created a cloud of distrust that would linger for decades, making it harder for genuine leads to gain traction. Compounding these challenges was the treacherous nature of human testimony. In the wake of such horrific events, fear warps perception, memory plays cruel tricks, and even well-intentioned witnesses can provide conflicting or unreliable accounts. A tapestry of whispers and shouted accusations was woven from fragmented memories, each thread pulling in a different direction. One witness swore they saw a tall man, another insisted on a shorter figure. One recalled a dark car, another a light-colored truck. Some individuals, perhaps seeking notoriety or driven by a desperate need for answers, even fabricated stories or offered false confessions, further muddying the already murky waters. Imagine the psychological toll on detectives trying to discern truth from fear-induced fantasy, fact from fiction, in a community gripped by terror. Every interview became an exercise in parsing sincerity from delusion, and the sheer volume of conflicting statements created an almost insurmountable barrier to establishing a clear timeline or identifying a consistent suspect profile.
Then came the jurisdictional nightmare. As the crimes continued, seemingly sprawling across county lines and even state borders, the investigation became a bureaucratic labyrinth. Invisible lines on a map, designed to delineate municipal authority, became impassable walls for justice. Local sheriffs, state police, and federal agents often found themselves at odds, their efforts fragmented by differing protocols, rivalries, and a frustrating lack of cohesive communication. Who held ultimate authority? Who had primary jurisdiction when a victim was found in one county but believed to have been abducted from another? These questions, seemingly minor on paper, became profound impediments to a unified strategy. Vital information was delayed, evidence was handled inconsistently, and the killer, if he was indeed crossing these arbitrary boundaries, exploited the very structure designed to catch him. The investigation wasn't a single, determined pursuit. It was a fragmented puzzle, with each agency holding pieces but lacking the master image. Decades passed. The initial frenzy faded, replaced by a chilling silence. The case went cold, a heavy weight on the collective conscience of the affected communities. But cold doesn't mean forgotten. Over the years, advancements in forensic science offered a glimmer of hope. The advent of DNA analysis, improved ballistics, and the creation of dedicated cold case units brought a renewed sense of purpose. Old evidence, once dismissed or improperly stored, was revisited, re-examined under the unforgiving lens of modern technology. New persons of interest emerged, sometimes based on reinterpreted evidence, sometimes on belated confessions or deathbed revelations that brought new controversies. Were these the real culprits, finally exposed by time and technology? Or were they merely new shadows in an already crowded gallery of suspects, destined to lead to yet more frustrating dead ends? The controversies surrounding these later investigations were no less intense. Families desperate for closure clung to every new lead, only to be crushed by subsequent disappointments. The very passage of time that sometimes aided new techniques
also eroded vital memories, silenced key witnesses who had passed away, and made the task of building a solid case exponentially harder. The original investigators were often retired or deceased, their institutional knowledge lost. The shadow of doubt once cast by initial blunders and unreliable testimonies now lengthened with every passing year, making it harder to distinguish truth from the echoes of history. Today, the unanswered questions persist. The tangled investigation, a multi-decade saga of leads, lies, and lingering doubts, remains a testament to the complexities of historical cold cases. It speaks to the human cost of unresolved violence, the persistent grip of geographical horror on communities, and the tireless, often heartbreaking search for answers. The killer's identity, for now, remains an elusive phantom, a dark secret held captive by the ravages of time and the profound imperfections of the human quest for justice. And in that lingering doubt, the story continues to haunt us, a stark reminder that some horrors, once unleashed, may never truly find their end.
Imagine a scream, unheard by justice, echoing across decades. Picture a cold case file, thick with dust, its secrets seemingly buried forever beneath layers of time and forgotten leads. For generations, the families of victims in untold American tragedies lived with an agonizing silence, a void where answers should have been. These were the cases that haunted communities, the perpetrators fading into the shadows, the hope for resolution dwindling with each passing year. But then, a quiet revolution began to brew in the hallowed halls of forensic science, a technological awakening that would breathe new, electrifying life into the darkest corners of these historical mysteries. It was a dawn of hope, ushered in by the silent, powerful whisper of DNA. Before this scientific breakthrough, law enforcement relied on methods that, while groundbreaking for their era, now seem almost rudimentary. Fingerprints, eyewitness accounts, ballistics, crucial pieces, yes, but often insufficient to crack the most baffling cases, especially those where evidence was scarce or contaminated. The criminal landscape was a vast, unforgiving wilderness, and without a definitive trail, countless predators vanished, leaving behind only grief and unanswered questions. The sheer geographical horror of some of these cold cases, sprawling across states with no apparent connection, only amplified the despair. Yet, as the 20th century drew to a close and a new millennium dawned, scientists began to unlock the secrets held within the very building blocks of life itself. Suddenly, that single strand of hair, that microscopic blood drop, that almost imperceptible fleck of skin, once dismissible as insignificant, transformed into the ultimate silent witness. Deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA, emerged as a molecular fingerprint unique to every individual. It was a game changer, promising to resurrect cases long abandoned, to re-examine evidence that had languished in police lockers for half a century or more. The notion that a microscopic trace could hold the key to a decades-old murder, a forgotten abduction, or a phantom rapist seemed almost too good to be true, yet it was real. And with this new tool came a seismic shift in how law enforcement approached the seemingly insurmountable. Across the nation, a specialized movement began to take root, the formation of dedicated cold case units. These weren't just any police squads. They were often comprised of seasoned detectives, many of whom had retired, but whose passion for justice still burned fiercely. They were brought back, their decades of street smarts and investigative instincts now paired with a new arsenal of scientific prowess.
These units became sanctuaries for the forgotten, digital archives replacing dusty file cabinets, forensic scientists collaborating intimately with investigators. They meticulously reopened cases, not just looking for a new lead, but reevaluating every single piece of evidence through the lens of modern technology. They chased ghosts through forensic databases, cross-referencing, linking, and connecting patterns that were invisible to the naked eye. Sometimes discovering that a perpetrator of a heinous crime in one state was in fact responsible for similar atrocities hundreds of miles away, finally giving context to the sprawling nature of these historical horrors.
But the true seismic shift, the moment that truly redefined the pursuit of justice in cold cases, arrived with the advent of investigative genetic genealogy. This wasn't just about matching DNA to a suspect already in a criminal database. This was about building a family tree from a crime scene sample. By uploading anonymous genetic profiles to public genealogy databases, detectives could connect with distant relatives of a perpetrator, third cousins, second cousins once removed, and painstakingly construct a family lineage. It was like reverse engineering a ghost. From a single tiny biological clue, an entire family history could be mapped, narrowing down potential suspects until the identity of a long-sought killer or victim could finally be unmasked. The world watched in awe as once untouchable cases, some dating back to the 1960s and 70s, suddenly yielded their secrets. The phantom became flesh. The anonymous victim received their name back. This wasn't an easy path, though. The challenges were immense. Degraded DNA samples from decades-old crime scenes, the meticulous work of extracting viable profiles, the endless hours spent poring over genealogical records, navigating ethical considerations of privacy, and the sheer persistence required by detectives who refused to give up. Yet, the dedication of these cold case teams has been nothing short of heroic. They understand that behind every file, every biological sample lies a human story of profound loss. They work not just for justice, but for the families who have carried the weight of uncertainty for far too long. The emotional impact of these breakthroughs cannot be overstated. Imagine a mother, now an elderly woman, who has spent 50 years wondering what happened to her child. Imagine the community finally learning the identity of a monster who terrorized their streets decades ago. The knock on the door, sometimes decades after the initial crime, bringing news of an identification or an arrest is a moment of bittersweet relief, a long-awaited echo of closure. It doesn't erase the pain, but it provides an answer, a form of peace, and a powerful affirmation that the victim was never truly forgotten. These modern efforts are more than just solving crimes. They're about reclaiming narratives, honoring memories, and ultimately healing persistent societal wounds. They prove that even when the trail seems cold, justice, like a persistent seeker, will eventually find its way through the darkness, guided by the silent, steadfast beacon of science. The age of truly unsolvable cases is waning.
The Texas Killing Fields, a name that echoes with a chilling finality, a phrase etched into the dark annals of American true crime. For decades, this desolate stretch of land, shrouded in mist and mystery, has held its breath, a silent, unblinking witness to unimaginable horrors. As we pull back from the abyss, as the shadows lengthen on this grim landscape, the enduring enigma of the killing fields refuses to fade, instead solidifying into a permanent fixture of fear. It leaves behind not just a tally of the lost, but an indelible scar on the soul of a community, a spectral presence that continues to haunt generations. The fear it instilled, once palpable and immediate, has solidified into a deep-seated unease, a constant whisper of the unknown that permeates the bayous and the back roads, forever altering the fabric of Galveston and Brazoria counties. Homes were locked tighter, children were watched with a new, frantic vigilance, and the trust in the familiar, once a given,
shattered into fragments. This isn't just a historical footnote. It's a living legacy of terror, a stark reminder that some monsters, unlike the changing tides, never truly recede, their darkness stubbornly clinging to the very air. The impact of these vanished young women reverberates far beyond the families directly affected. It has become a grim touchstone in the broader landscape of American true crime, a haunting case study in persistent evil and the agonizing limitations of justice, even in the face of modern investigative prowess. While countless hours, incredible dedication, and groundbreaking forensic science have been poured into these investigations across multiple decades, the cold reality is that many cases remain unsolved, their files thick with unanswered questions and an aching silence that mocks every effort. Law enforcement agencies, from diligent local sheriffs to the relentless agents of the FBI, have pursued leads across state lines, interviewed thousands, and revisited every piece of evidence with renewed hope brought by new technologies and fresh perspectives. Yet for all the scientific advances and the unwavering commitment, the specter of these unsolved disappearances casts a long, cold shadow, mocking the very concept of closure for so many. The faces of Laura Miller, Heidi Faye, Donna Gabel, Colette Wilson, and so many others still stare out from faded posters and digital screens, their youth tragically frozen in time, their futures cruelly snatched away. The persistent questions gnaw at the edges of our understanding, breeding a profound disquiet. Was there one monstrous predator, a solitary wolf lurking in the wetlands, or a sinister network, a cabal of darkness operating under the cover of the bayou's vast anonymity, its secret paths and dense foliage providing the ultimate sanctuary? The theories are as numerous as the vanished, each one a desperate attempt to impose order on an unfathomable chaos, a human need to comprehend the incomprehensible. Was it a lone transient passing through, leaving a trail of sorrow, or a local resident with a hidden, depraved agenda blending seamlessly into the community by day? Or perhaps a cunning serial killer whose reach extended far beyond this specific geographic horror, leaving a wake of despair across a wider swath of the nation? The answer, it seems, remains trapped within the shifting sands and the dense undergrowth, guarded by the silent sentinels of the Texas Gulf Coast. Every new cold case review, every fresh pair of eyes on the evidence sparks a fragile, desperate hope, a belief that just one forgotten detail, one misplaced memory, one fragment of an old conversation could be the key to unlocking decades of pain. And so we are left to ponder the true human cost, the devastating ripple effect of each stolen life.
Imagine the birthdays uncelebrated, the holidays empty, the graduations and weddings that never were, the grandchildren never known. These were not just statistics or newspaper headlines. They were daughters, sisters, friends, vibrant young women with dreams, ambitions, and futures that were violently extinguished before their time. Their stories, though tragically cut short, deserve to be remembered, to be spoken aloud, to be honored with the relentless, unyielding pursuit of truth. We must never allow the cruel passage of time to dim the urgency of their quest for justice, nor to erase the precious memory of their existence from our collective consciousness. The Texas killing fields are a stark, painful reminder of the brutal vulnerability of life, and paradoxically, the enduring power of human resilience and love in the face of unspeakable tragedy. The hope for closure, though decades in the making, remains a burning ember, flickering but stubbornly alive. It is fueled by the unwavering love of families who refuse to give up, by the tireless dedication of investigators who carry the profound weight of these cases in their hearts,
and by the sheer moral imperative that every life lost deserves an answer, deserves to be acknowledged. Perhaps one day a confession will emerge from the deepest shadows, shattering the long silence. Or a long-dormant piece of evidence, re-examined with revolutionary techniques unimaginable at the time of the disappearances, will finally speak with undeniable clarity. Until then, the call for justice echoes across the desolate fields, a persistent, mournful cry from the past, demanding to be heard, demanding action. Let us remember their names, let us remember their stories, and let us collectively hold on to the unwavering, fierce hope that the chilling silence of the Texas killing fields will one day break, revealing the truths that have been buried for far too long. For only then can the souls of the lost truly rest, and the living find a measure of profound, hard-won peace.